Episode 61. The Unstoppable Great Coach _1. However, inside the BMW, Aaron Jackson was unaware that someone was waiting for them. Boss Potter. After he got into the car, he immediately took out his phone and called Stanislaus Potter. In the car, he had already communicated with Julius Reed and was very aware of the current situation. Since the Potter family was intent on finding trouble, he decided to collect some interest first. "Who is this?" A deep, middle-aged male voice came from the other end of the phone. "I'm Aaron Jackson. Your prized son is in my hands right now. I'm wondering how much Boss Potter is willing to pay?" "Aaron Jackson? Aaron Jackson." Upon hearing Aaron Jackson's voice, Stanislaus Potter seemed somewhat shocked. Aaron Jackson's reputation was well known throughout Five River Province. But how had he himself ended up offending this plague? "Aaron Jackson, my Potter family has no grudges against you. Why would you do this?" Regaining his composure, Stanislaus Potter's tone carried anger. As a prominent family in the provincial city and the chairman of the Golden Eagle Group, his son had actually been kidnapped. "I warn you, some matters are not to be trifled with. Mr. Potter, rest assured, I'm just fulfilling someone's request, working for the money. Right now, I can still guarantee your son's safety. But if we're too late..." Aaron Jackson paused midway, causing Stanislaus Potter's heart to leap with alarm. He had only this one son, and couldn't afford any mishap. "Name your price." $300 million, not too much, right?" Before Stanislaus Potter could reply, Aaron Jackson interjected. "Everyone knows your Golden Eagle Group has assets over $10 billion. If $300 million is too much for you to part with, perhaps you might as well not want this son." "Fine, $300 million it is. I'm sending someone over right now. Give me the address." Stanislaus Potter took a deep breath, striving to keep himself calm. "South City Cement Factory. Someone will meet you once you arrive." After saying that, Aaron Jackson hung up the phone directly. The very next moment, his expression turned ice-cold. Because on the road Ania, or NM, a ramen tree swami lay across. The moment the BMW stopped, four white-clad men approached the car from the outside, each emitting a killing intent, evidently not ordinary people. But since the other party didn't make a move, he remained stationary as well. "What are you doing?" Seeing this scene, Dominating Tiger instinctively stepped out, positioning himself in front of them. Aaron Jackson also got out of the car, looking at the several men with cold eyes. North City Black Bear, does Aaron Jackson still remember? The white-clad men did not rush to attack, but instead, after surrounding the two, they asked aloud, "Black Bear? He broke the rules, and I killed him with my own hands." Aaron Jackson nodded indifferently, his face showing no sign of panic. "Good that Aaron Jackson admits it. Today, we shall seek justice for our brother Black Bear." Having finished speaking, the four white-clad men attacked at the same time. Bang! Without time to think further, Dominating Tiger met the punch of the white-clad man in the lead with a punch of his own. The immense force caused the man to stagger back several steps. "It's tricky." Dominating Tiger turned back to warn Aaron Jackson after feeling his right arm go numb, the bones aching, as if they were about to break. Aaron Jackson didn't need the warning. He'd already sensed that something was off. The attack from these men was very systematic, and their strength was astonishing. Just a few exchanges in, and he was beginning to be overpowered. Theodore Kensington's men truly skilled. By this point, Aaron Jackson had guessed the identities of the white-clad men. They must be from the dominating martial arts hall, elite among elites. "You dare trouble Brother Abernathy's men. You should have known this would be the consequence." The eyes of the white-clad man narrowed, his fist whistling through the air, smashing furiously. Bang! Aaron Jackson suddenly kicked up, suspending himself in mid-air with the momentum. And behind him, several punches grazed his back as they flew past. Boom! The fist of the white-clad man crashed into a lamppost, snapping it in half with a lazy blow. Seizing the chance, Aaron Jackson leaped backward, briefly breaking free from the encirclement of the four men. How shameful for the mighty Aaron Jackson to be bullied by, for nobody's like. Right at that moment, an abrupt voice sounded on the street. Following the voice, they saw a thin man around 20 years old, standing not far from a BMW with hands clasped behind his back, looking over at them. "Ah, I've embarrassed Brother Abernathy." Aaron Jackson felt a burning shame on his face, and somewhat embarrassed. The four men before him were indeed the elite of the elite. Although he could beat them, it would certainly take quite an effort. Who did you call nobodies? The men in white hadn't intended to cause more trouble, hoping to leave after dealing with Aaron Jackson. But now being mocked as nobodies, they naturally couldn't tolerate it. In the martial arts hall, they were famous instructors clad in white, who ordinary students couldn't even get close to. Theodore Kensington paid them salaries in the tens of millions each year, and they addressed each other as brothers in daily life. During Theodore's business expansions, these men had contributed greatly, even being revered as the Grim Reapers in white. Yet to be scorned by a skinny young man, their fury was imaginable. "You three handle him first, I'll go crush an ant." After saying this, the lead man turned and walked towards Julius Reed. "Boss," Brother Abernathy said not to cause unnecessary trouble. The remaining men in white reminded him, "It's fine, I'll be right back. You guys take down Aaron Jackson first." Turning back around, the lead man threw a ferocious punch. As he punched, his aura surged dramatically, as if he intended to shatter everything. You leave the gates of heaven untraveled, yet there is not even a door. But halfway through his words, the man in white suddenly stopped, because his earth-shattering punch had been caught, stiffly, by the seemingly frail young man before him. "No door to hell? Then let me send you to hell and see if there really is a door." As he spoke, Julius Reed's gaze shifted sharply, and the strength in his hand increased suddenly. Crack! The man in white's wrist was broken just like that. "Ah!" A painful scream instantly spread throughout the whole corridor. Who are you?" Terror filled the man's eyes as his face twisted in agony. As one of the top instructors of the martial arts hall, his strength was immense. Ordinary students couldn't even lay a finger on him. But today his wrist had been snapped with one hand. "Does it matter who I am?" As he spoke, Julius Reed suddenly lunged forward, grabbed the man's neck with a single hand, and hoisted him up. Let me go." The man's eyes reflected disbelief as his legs kicked frantically. Struggling to breathe, his face had turned purple. Crack! Without giving the man in white another chance to speak, Julius Reed squeezed hard and snapped his neck. This stark contrast completely dumbfounded dominating Tiger, who was watching from the side. He'd been in the game for many years and considered himself quite capable, yet he couldn't withstand a single punch from the man in white. Even Aaron Jackson was having a tough time facing the onslaught of four opponents. But Julius Reed just easily took down the strongest among them, and it seemed as if he barely exerted any effort at all. Now he seemed to understand why Aaron Jackson called Julius Reed Big Brother. "Now that the strongest has been dealt with, I'll leave the rest to you." With that, Julius Reed let go and the body of the man in white dropped to the ground. With Julius Reed's words, Aaron Jackson felt even more embarrassed. He was, after all, a figure with considerable influence, and today he had truly lost face, so he directed all his anger at the remaining few. Bang! 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 Aaron Jackson suddenly made his move, throwing 3 solid punches at an indistinguishable speed, causing the 3 shocked men in white to stagger back several steps. Now, how could the men in white still have the heart to fight? Their only main instructor had been killed, leaving no chance of victory for the 3 remaining instructors. Once fear sets into a person's heart, their strength diminishes significantly. A moment ago it had been an even match, but now the situation had become completely one-sided. Aaron Jackson, with all his anger, unleashed it at that moment. Soon after, the 3 men were beaten to a pulp and lay on the ground, moaning in agony. Clearly, Aaron Jackson did not plan to let them off. With 2 punches, he shattered the throats of 2 of the men in white. Episode 62. The Arrogant Harlan Potter _1. If you dare to touch us, Brother Abernathy will never let you go. The last man in white shivered, as if he had seen the Grim Reaper, his body instinctively backing away. Fear was in his eyes, endless fear. Then let him come. With 1 foot, Aaron Jackson stomped down, breaking his neck outright. Damn it! In an Audi not far from the street, Theodore Kensington roared, crushing the earpiece to dust. He had installed miniature listening devices on the 4 trainers. Everything that happened inside, he knew like the back of his hand from within the car. It was the experience he had accumulated over years on the streets. Aaron Jackson. We'll see about that. Quince Kensington flipped to the driver's seat, looked at the distant BMW with bloodshot eyes, and slammed the accelerator. The south of the city was the most run-down part of Gonzales City, originally a village within the city. Later, all the residents moved into the city. As a result, it became deserted, and with the recent push for environmental protection, many polluting companies were investigated. Companies like cement factories that violated regulations inevitably couldn't escape and had been abandoned ever since. Because it was too far from the city center, no communities or industries developed here, and it quickly became a wasteland overgrown with weeds. After stepping out of the car, Aaron Jackson, together with Julius Reed and Dominating Tiger, entered the dilapidated cement factory. Since no one had been here for a long time, the grass had grown taller than a person, and the ground was littered with trash, emitting a foul stench. Further in, due to chemical pollution, there were fewer weeds, leaving only a spacious warehouse. Originally used for storing cement, this warehouse had been empty since the factory ceased production. Before long, a Maybach slowly drove up to the entrance of the cement plant. The car did not rush to stop but circled around, confirming there was no one around, before slowly heading toward the factory area. When it came to an area where the weeds were extremely high, the car finally stopped. As the car door opened, a stern man stepped out. Although this car belonged to Stanislaus Potter, the man sitting inside was the steward of the Potter family, Harlan Potter. On a regular basis, Harlan Potter managed all matters for the Potter family. Some even called him Stanislaus Potter's shadow. Should we start directly? On the way, a few Potter family people asked softly. They were the elite of the elite, holding very high positions among bodyguards. Play it by ear, but the primary objective is to ensure the young master's safety. Just get the young master out, and kill the rest on sight. Harlan Potter loosened the tie around his neck, a hint of arrogance flashing in his eyes. As a former Special Forces operative, his combat strength was astonishing. Over the years working for Stanislaus Potter, he had foiled countless murder attempts and eliminated many competitors for the Potter family. It could be said that without Harlan Potter, there wouldn't be a Potter family today. That morning, he received news that Kwame Potter had been kidnapped, with a huge ransom demanded. After getting the address, Harlan Potter had brought people directly to the Radcliffe Group. Ding-ling. At that moment, his phone suddenly rang. "Sir, I have arrived at the Radcliffe Group. Harlan, ensure Kwame's safety at all costs. And if it comes down to it, we'll pay the money." On the phone, Stanislaus Potter's voice carried anxiety. He had only one son and couldn't tolerate any mishaps. "Rest assured, sir, no one has ever left alive under my watch. I guarantee you, I will rescue the young master. And by the way, I'll break the necks of that gang of kidnappers." Harlan Potter spoke coldly, his gaze filled with contempt. His formidable strength granted him the right to be proud. "I believe in you." After uttering those words, Stanislaus Potter hung up the phone. He trusted the steward of the Potter family to get things done. "Do we really not need to prepare a plan B?" One of his subordinates asked softly. In Harlan Potter's dictionary, there is only success. "No more words. Follow my command." A faint smile appeared on the corner of Harlan's lips, as if he didn't mind sending these people on their final journey since they were seeking their own death. It wasn't long until they saw a man standing in the cement factory. Potter family people, Dominating Tiger, looking at the approaching Harlan and his group, asked aloud, "Correct. Is Kwame Potter in your hands?" Today, Harlan was dressed in a white suit with a red tie. These were the clothes he always wore when he killed people, the white symbolizing death and the red symbolizing life. This made him look somewhat bizarre and sinister. In his early 30s, Harlan possessed a steadiness and calmness that was unusual for his age. "Have you brought the ransom?" Feeling Harlan's stare, Dominating Tiger felt a chilling cold in his heart, as if a knife were held against his throat. "I need to confirm he is safe and sound before transferring the money to you." Such a large sum can only be transferred electronically. Harlan turned his back to them, his eyes narrowing quietly. This was his signature move. Once his eyes narrowed, bloodshed was certain. "Come in." Dominating Tiger wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and turned to walk into the storeroom. Having been through the life-and-death struggle of the underworld for so many years and escaping numerous close calls, he had never been as fearful as he was today. The others' gaze and presence seemed as though they would devour him whole. Soon, Harlan led his group into the warehouse. The storeroom was spacious, having been used for cement storage in the past. At the moment, Kwame Potter's face was covered in blood, his head drooping listlessly as he was tied to a chair. Aaron Jackson and Julius Reed stood on either side of him. "You are playing with fire." Seeing Kwame's sorry state, Harlan clenched his fists tightly, his face immediately darkening. In Five River Province, the Potter family was a brand of gold. No one dared to mess with them, nor could they afford to. But today, the only heir of the Potter family had been beaten to this extent. Disgrace. "Now that you've seen him, transfer the money." Dominating Tiger swallowed hard, his heart beating faster and faster. "Money? Huh. I will burn every last cent of it for you. Remember, if the King of Hell asks about you, tell him it was Harlan Potter who sent you on your way." As he spoke, Harlan suddenly lunged forward and lifted Dominating Tiger with one hand. Let go of me." Dominating Tiger hadn't even had time to react before he was suspended in the air. "In your next life, don't be my enemy." Whoosh! At the critical moment, a sharp sound of something cutting through the air suddenly struck. Swish! Harlan threw Dominating Tiger aside and deftly caught the flying card with 2 fingers. Soul Chaser card. Looking at the card in his hand, Harlan grinned and said, "Aaron Jackson, a pleasure to meet you." Episode 63. Fight like this next time _1. The Soul Chasing Order is an extremely special existence. No one had known what it looked like, for those who had seen it were dead. But on the bodies of the deceased, there would usually be a soul-chasing order. When Aaron Jackson first arrived in Gonzales City, he decided to adopt this aggressive and intimidating approach to expand his business quickly. It was then that the soul-chasing order first became known to the world. The moment he got the card, he knew Aaron Jackson was nearby. They say no one who gets the soul-chasing order lives. Harlan Potter looked at the card in his hand, smiled, and turned to look at Aaron Jackson not far away. Ordinary people were terrified at the sight of the soul-chasing order, yet he was as calm as could be, smiling. "In fact, that's true." Aaron Jackson nodded, smiling in return. Dominating Tiger was his capable underling and ranked amongst the tough fighters of Gonzales City. But just now, in a mere single round, Dominating Tiger was captured, and it was a quick defeat, which was enough to show that the newcomer was unfriendly. "So should I feel honored to receive this distinction from Aaron Jackson?" Harlan Potter shrugged, appearing extremely relaxed. "You'll have to try and see." Aaron Jackson gave a slight smile, but in the next moment, he pounced forward like a fierce tiger. Bang! 2 fists collided, causing a thunderous sound. Aaron Jackson's reputation is well deserved. He really has some skills. Harlan Potter stepped back, a fervent look flashing in his eyes. He hadn't met such an opponent in a long time, one that could give him a good fight. The steward of the Potter family rightfully boasts a fierce reputation. After a brief exchange, Aaron Jackson also had a sense of Harlan Potter's strength. Rumors had it that Harlan Potter was very tough. Seeing him now confirmed that. Encountering 2 strong enemies on the same day also ignited a fighting spirit in Aaron Jackson. Today, does the Potter family not intend to pay this sum of money? In my dictionary, there's only taking, never giving. Harlan Potter said arrogantly, "Today, there are only 2 outcomes. You die, or I live." After saying that, he suddenly kicked out powerfully. His kick, carrying a sharp whistling sound, headed straight for Aaron Jackson. Crack! Aaron Jackson sidestepped in a flash, and the chair he had just been sitting on splintered into pieces. "Save the young master, leave this man to me." Harlan Potter glanced at Julius Reed and decided to ignore him. In his eyes, this lean young man was no more than a regular employee and not worth mentioning. He slowly began to undo the buttons on his suit jacket, revealing a door black shirt underneath. "Yes, sir." A few subordinates nodded and quickly ran towards Kwame Potter. Today, their primary mission was to rescue young Master Potter safely. As for the life or death of Aaron Jackson, that was Harlan Potter's own affair. "Sorry, need to use the bathroom." As the men rushed in front of him, Julius Reed stood up, ready to leave. Trying to leave? No one's leaving alive today. The Potter family people sneered and reached out to block Julius Reed's way. In their view, Aaron Jackson's employee was clearly frightened and now trying to flee. But was that possible? After beating young Master Potter like that, he still thought he could leave alive? "Sorry, really have to step out for a moment." Julius Reed spoke with an apologetic tone. Crawl under my legs then." Several Potter family people went to untie the ropes around Kwame Potter, while another stayed to toy with Julius Reed. While Aaron Jackson was locked in a close fight with Harlan Potter, they had already successfully rescued Kwame Potter, so playing around with an employee of Aaron Jackson didn't seem like much. "That's too much." Faced with the man's unreasonable demand, Julius Reed's face darkened. "Too much? Then come and hit me." The man burst into laughter after speaking, thinking killing Julius Reed was as simple as squashing an ant. They trained with Harlan Potter day in and day out, developing significant skills. Even facing 5 or 6 opponents, they could handle it with ease. Bang! Faced with such an unreasonable demand, Julius Reed shook his head and kicked out fiercely. Ack! This kick landed viciously in the man's groin, contorting his face in agony. "Break him for me." The man took a deep breath, but his body began to tremble uncontrollably. "Kill him." Seeing their comrade injured, several men immediately surrounded Julius Reed. "He's the one who told me to do it." Julius Reed shrugged his shoulders, feeling somewhat helpless. "Die." The men's faces turned grim, and they struck without warning. Bang! Facing several attackers, Julius Reed took a fierce step forward and grabbed the heads of 2 men, ruthlessly smashing them together. The once haughty Potter family people now felt their heads might explode, staggering in their tracks. "What's going on?" Harlan Potter, who was fighting Aaron Jackson, also sensed something was off. He tried to extricate himself from the fight, but Aaron Jackson didn't give an inch. Bang! After exchanging blows, both men stepped back. "A bunch of trash, what's going on?" Harlan Potter's brow furrowed as he glanced at his subordinates lying on the ground. All these men were his subordinates, every one of them elite. But now, in the blink of an eye, they all lay on the ground. Subconsciously, Harlan Potter's attention turned to Julius Reed. Dominating Tiger stood at the door, not having moved at all. Aaron Jackson had been engaged in combat with him this whole time, leaving Julius Reed as the only possibility. Could it have been him? Harlan Potter's brows tightened as he guessed in his mind. The originally flawless plan had suddenly encountered an unexpected twist. Useless fools! He cursed furiously, becoming increasingly agitated. Rescuing Kwame Potter was the top priority, yet his people had been incapacitated. Facing Aaron Jackson, he had no choice but to enter a berserk state. At this moment, everyone present could feel the towering killing intent. "Die!" Harlan Potter roared as he mercilessly pounded his fists down. The punch was even more powerful than before. Bang! Aaron Jackson reached out to block, but was jolted back 2 steps. Berserk! Facing this change, the word berserk flashed through Aaron Jackson's mind. Rumor spoke of a cultivation technique that could exponentially increase one's ability in a short time. Clearly, Harlan Potter was using this method. Very clever, but you're all going to die. Harlan Potter bellowed, his eyes turning blood red. Clutching his fists tightly, he smashed forward again. In an instant, The scent of death began to permeate the room. This berserk state could only be maintained for half an hour, and it was quite damaging to the body. Therefore, he had to kill everyone within that time and find a safe place to recuperate. Crack. Suddenly, a hand appeared where Aaron Jackson had just been standing. Soon after, the sound of breaking bones came from Harlan Potter's arm. How is this possible? Compared to the excruciating pain, Harlan Potter was more shocked. He stared with wide eyes at the lean young man before him. Who are you? If you had taken that blow directly just now, your arm would be injured. Julius Reed didn't answer him, but turned instead to look at Aaron Jackson. Next time, fight like this. After speaking, he suddenly delivered a chop. Crack. Harlan Potter frantically tried to block with his hand, but in the next moment, his entire arm was twisted and deformed. Episode 64. Attack in the Alley _1. Impossible. Harlan Potter suppressed the heart-wrenching pain, leaning against the warehouse wall as he gasped for air. No one had ever beaten him in a frenzied state, not ever. Unfortunately, it's happened. Julius Reed shrugged his shoulders and said to Aaron Jackson, I'll leave the rest to you. Sure. Aaron Jackson nodded and slowly walked towards Harlan Potter. Go to hell. Even with both arms broken, Harlan Potter's proud heart still wouldn't allow him to submit. Watching Aaron Jackson approaching, he suddenly leaped up, his legs chopping down like lightning. Crack. Facing this desperate attack, Aaron Jackson simply met it head-on and chopped down with his palm. The immense force instantly broke Harlan Potter's leg bones. Thud. Harlan Potter fell to the ground, with large beads of sweat now forming on his forehead. Originally, his strength was on par with Aaron Jackson's, but now that his arms were disabled, he naturally was no match for Aaron Jackson. Who are you? Even if I am to die, let me die knowing. Even with 2 broken arms and a leg, Harlan Potter, enduring the excruciating pain, looked up at Julius Reed and asked with a trembling voice. He couldn't believe it. In this world, there could be someone who would defeat him so miserably. You're not worthy of knowing my big brother's name. Aaron Jackson stepped on Harlan Potter's chest and took out a cell phone from his pocket. It looks like the ransom has just doubled. He, Stanislaus Potter, should be thankful. If it were someone else, they might have already torn up the ticket. Julius Reed stood by, smiling cheerfully. Good, then let's double it. Aaron Jackson nodded and dialed Stanislaus Potter's number using Harlan Potter's phone. Is the young master rescued? As soon as the call connected, Stanislaus Potter asked eagerly. Boss Potter, we're about to tear up the ticket. Aaron Jackson sighed, somewhat helplessly saying, I dealt with you honestly, but you sent people to kill me. That's not quite fair, is it? After a brief silence, on the other end, Stanislaus Potter's voice became more anxious. Aaron Jackson, money is negotiable. I was wrong about what happened today. Name your terms. I, Stanislaus Potter, guarantee with my personal reputation that I will play no more tricks. He had only this one son and couldn't afford any slip-ups. As if afraid Aaron Jackson wouldn't believe him, he added, please give me your account number, and within halt an hour, I will definitely transfer the money to your account. Please, you must believe me. By the end, his voice was already quivering. Since that's the case, then we won't tear up the ticket. The ransom is doubled, 600 million, not too much, right? Aaron Jackson said with a light smile, your man here can fight. He scared my people quite a bit. So, asking for a bit more as a medical fee. That seems fair, doesn't it? 650 million. As long as you release my son and Harlan Potter, the money will be transferred quickly. Stanislaus Potter immediately increased the price by 50 million without any hesitation. Good. Boss Potter is a straightforward man. If you hadn't made all this mess, your son might already be home safe. Why bother? Even Aaron Jackson didn't expect the other party to be so straightforward, adding 50 million directly. It even made him feel somewhat embarrassed. As long as my son is safe, money is no issue. Aaron Jackson, I hope you keep your word. Now send me the account number. As the party being extorted, Stanislaus Potter was even more eager than Aaron Jackson. But thinking about it, it made sense. The Potter family only had this one heir. If something happened to Kwame Potter, who would inherit the family's fortune of over tens of billions? You can rest assured on that, Boss Potter. I, Aaron Jackson, keep my word. As soon as I get the money, I'll naturally send your son back. After giving the account number to Stanislaus Potter, Aaron Jackson hung up the phone and took out a cigarette from his pocket. It was already the afternoon, and many employees were leaving work one by one. On the outskirts of the Radcliffe Group, 2 black vans appeared quietly. Inside the vans, a group of blonde-haired and blue-eyed foreign men sat in the seats, staring intently at the group's main entrance. Every one of them carried a fierce, killing intent, with a cold light twinkling in their pupils, clearly the desperados of doomed fates. Not long after, Quella Radcliffe walked out of the main entrance. As soon as she got into the Rolls-Royce, 2 black vans slowly followed behind. Throughout the journey, the vans maintained a just right distance from the Rolls-Royce, neither easy to detect nor easy to lose. It wasn't until both vehicles turned into an alley that one of the vans suddenly sped up, and then came to a stop sideways in front of the Rolls-Royce. Faced with a sudden situation, Quella Radcliffe instinctively slammed on the brakes. Screech! With the sound of tires skidding against the road surface, the Rolls-Royce stopped between the 2 vans. At the same time, several foreign men got out of the vans. Quella Radcliffe didn't need to think to know she was being kidnapped. She was about to floor the accelerator when the window next to her shattered. "Oh, dear beauty, my apologies for frightening you," said one of the foreign men with a sneer as he reached into the car and opened the door from the inside. "Frank, let's talk. Get the job done quickly." His companion clearly wasn't pleased and rudely pulled Quella Radcliffe from the driving seat, shoving her toward the van. "Watch out." Just then, the man called Frank's pupils contracted sharply, and he suddenly ducked. Whoosh! 3 plum blossom darts whizzed past his body and embedded into the alley's wall. The wall, made of marble, shattered under the impact of the darts. "Eric, take them and go. Leave the rest to me." A cold light flashed in Frank's eyes as he was completely enraged by the sneak attack. "Okay." Eric struck Quella Radcliffe on the neck with his palm, knocking her out before tossing her into the van. "Don't linger in battle." After giving a few instructions, he started the van, preparing to leave. Whoosh! Just then, 2 plum blossom darts shot out, piercing through the van's front windshield. Like a wild beast, Eric quickly leaned back. The darts brushed past his face, leaving 2 bloody streaks on Eric's cheek. Having discerned their opponent's location, Frank and several foreign men charged forward. Whoosh! This time, dozens of plum blossom darts rained down like a torrent, piercing the 2 foreign men at the front. Paul Anthony, seeing his companions brutally killed, Eric's eyes reddened as he drew 2 throwing knives from his waist. "Come out!" he roared, flinging his arms forward with all his might. Clang! Clang! With the sound of metal clashing, 2 women appeared in the alley. "Who are you? Why did you kill my companions?" Facing the 2 Eastern women in yellow tracksuits, Frank's gaze was icy cold. These people had been through life and death together, as close as brothers. Yet today, 2 of them were forever parted from their comrades. As the squad leader of Blood Canyon, rage filled Frank's entire being. "Release the woman in the van, or you all will die." The woman in yellow pointed at the van where Quella Radcliffe was, her tone just as icy. "Then bury my brothers with you." Frank's expression darkened, and suddenly, a sharp knife appeared in his hand. Episode 6564. The Shame of Wilson Pavilion _1. This time, under the introduction by Iron Hoof, they quietly came here to talk business with the Gonzales City's Brandon family. But what frustrated everyone was that they had failed at their very first attempt. They even failed to carry out the planned script of a post-drinking car accident. Now it was their second attempt, and the target was to kidnap a woman. However, a task that seemed so simple ended up costing them 2 members. As the team leader, Frank's mood was outrageously terrible. Survival of the fittest. The two women in yellow each took a separate path, their faces showing a grave expression. Upon receiving the order from Amadeus Fairbanks, they guarded the entrance of the Radcliffe group without straying a step. But they still failed to predict the incident. And based on their experience, the opponents were an extremely strong group of martial artists. Living on the edge of death year-round had made them highly sensitive to such warriors. Thus, both of them put forth all their strength, not daring to be careless in the slightest. Brian, Tony, Kevin, you three take the left flank. Eric, put down that broad and help me finish her off. Frank had already realized that without taking down these two Eastern women, they would stand no chance of leaving. 0K. A few of them nodded and quickly moved toward their respective opponents. Their teamwork was seamless, and soon they engaged in combat with the two women in yellow. After all, they did not have the advantage in numbers, and facing professional shadow warriors, the two women in yellow gradually fell on the defensive. Frank and the others were not in a hurry. They aimed to exhaust the women's stamina bit by bit, leaving no chance for them to counterattack. Finally, one of the women fighting against the combined efforts of Frank and Eric made a mistake and got a solid cut from Frank on her shoulder. HSS. The woman leaped backward, her complexion instantly turning pale. How are you holding up? Seeing her comrade injured, the other woman tried to break away from the fight to help, but the men from Blood Valley obviously had no intention of letting her go. This moment of distraction immediately caused her to falter, and her abdomen was viciously kicked by Brian. Pooh! The woman rolled backward, a mouthful of fresh blood spraying onto the ground. You bitch, daring to kill my brother. Today, you will die here. A cold glint flashed in Frank's eyes as he sprinted forward, his dagger rapidly slashing down. Thud! Just then, one of the women threw something onto the ground, and instantly, a cloud of black smoke rose up in the alley. Frank halted in his tracks, and when he tried to pursue, he found that the two were already gone. Captain, do we pursue? Eric asked from the side. The two of them were clearly injured and couldn't have gone far. Take care of the job first. These two have quite the backing to be able to escape from our Blood Valley's encirclement. Once we hand over the person, we will come back for revenge. Frank clenched his fists tightly, his eyes filled with intense hatred. To my brothers I will avenge you. He knelt beside the heads of the two dead team members, using his hands to close their eyes. Not far from the alleyway, one of the women in yellow pulled out a phone, ignoring her own wounds, and made a call. Pavilion Master, we have failed. The target has been taken by a group of foreign shadow warriors. What did you say? Say it again. After a brief silence on the phone, a roar came through. Waste. Idiots. Why don't you just die? Do you know who that is? Where is the person now? Where? Answer me. During the fight just now, we secretly stuck a tracker on our opponent. I'm sending you the signal now. After the woman in yellow had finished speaking, her lips curled with a touch of bitterness. If it weren't for the need to report back, we would have chosen to die in battle. Keep your lives, and make amends for your mistake by redeeming yourselves with meritorious deeds. With a roar, the call was disconnected. At the same time, on a small island deep in the ocean, a middle-aged man dressed in lavish attire crushed the phone in his hand with fury. Pavilion Master, what's wrong? A bodyguard at his side asked aloud. Someone has kidnapped the young madam of the 10,000 Mountain Alliance, and I'm afraid I must personally go and ask for forgiveness, with a humble gift. The middle-aged man took a deep breath and slowly closed his eyes. What? The young master of the 10,000 Mountain Alliance has gotten married. The bodyguard's face was filled with shock. Pavilion Master, what should we do now? Hearing the words, 10,000 Mountain Alliance, his tone became somewhat agitated. Vaughn and Apollo have placed a tracker. Immediately find the target's location. The middle-aged man sighed and said, This time, I, Amadeus Fairbanks, have utterly lost face in front of the young master. Amadeus Fairbanks shook his head, looking out at the sea ahead, his face filled with bitterness. Pavilion Master, the target has stopped moving. The location is in the western suburbs of Gonzales City, at Hibiscus Mansion. The exact coordinates are Villa number 7. The bodyguard took out a monitor from the backpack and operated it skillfully. According to Vaughn's intelligence, the opposing side consists of a group of shadow warriors. Amadeus Fairbanks took a deep breath, his pupils flaring with endless chill. Dare to make Wilson Pavilion lose face. Don't blame me for eradicating you. Shepard, immediately find out the identities of these people and issue my killing order. Pavilion Master, are you sure? Shepard looked at Amadeus Fairbanks with some doubt. The last time a killing order was issued was 50 years ago. Whenever a killing order appeared, the entire world of shadow warriors would experience severe turmoil. Though they be far, they shall be slain. After uttering these 4 words, Amadeus Fairbanks turned and left the seaside, while taking out another phone with a bitter expression and dialing a number. At this moment, Julius Reed was unaware that Quella Radcliffe had been kidnapped. After receiving the payment from Stanislaus Potter, he and Aaron Jackson got into a BMW and headed home. Halfway through the journey, his phone rang. When he saw the incoming call number, Julius Reed suddenly had a bad feeling. What's the matter? Young master, my people have failed you. The young madam has been taken. Say that again. Upon hearing those words, Julius Reed radiated an overwhelming, murderous intent. Sorry, the young madam is currently at Hibiscus Mansion, in Villa number 7 in the western suburbs. The voice of Amadeus Fairbanks was very solemn. The opponents are a group of well-trained shadow warriors. My people are investigating. Please trust me, respected young master. Wilson Pavilion will spare no effort to destroy this organization, no matter who they are, no matter where they are. Amadeus Fairbanks, you don't have to blame yourself too much. I was careless and didn't anticipate they would hire shadow warriors. After Julius Reed hung up the phone, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Hibiscus Mansion, Villa number 7. Big brother, shall I gather the brothers? Aaron Jackson guessed the situation from their conversation. Today, I will have a massacre. Julius Reed clenched his fists tightly, the ring on his hand flashing with a dazzling red light.